Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Now I wanted to touch on something that I brought up in the Moore's DVD about Northern Africa and how they're trying to basically steal Northern Africa. Now this is an important point, so I wanted to get it out, put it on YouTube, because a lot of people need to understand what's taking place. Now what they're trying to say is, Sub Saharan Africa is completely different from Northern Africa. Now we have been through this before with Egypt, how they're trying to basically separate Egypt from the rest of Africa. I mean, Egypt completely different from Africa. When you pay attention with Israel and basically where the Phoenicians ruled and everything like that, when you really look at it, this is still all a part of Africa, and they try to separate it, because of conquest. So the thing is, they want to say that Northern Africans DNA wise is completely different from Sub-Saharan Africans, which is true, but that's basically after colonization. The claim now is that Northern Africans have always been European, and of course that's bogus. Africans have been in Northern Africa thousands of years before Europeans existed. But you got to understand that they are pushing this. It sounds retarded, it sounds stupid that somebody would actually try to push this agenda, try to separate Africans from Africans, but it's an agenda that's been pushed because they have a lot of Europeans in Northern Africa, and a lot of people who don't realize that they're mixed with European blood or Aryan blood. A lot of these people in Northern Africa, we're talking about from Morocco, stretching all the way over to Northern Egypt. A lot of these people that you see there with light skin color are a result of mixing from when the Romans came into Northern Africa and basically conquered. So this is what you got to understand. And of course, before that, this was African territory. Africans was there. So the thing is, you'll see they've been using George Lopez to kind of push this movement, and a couple other people have been shouting that whole Sub-Saharan African thing. If you watch George Lopez on his TV show when he was doing DNA testing, he tested a lot of famous celebrities, and he will always keep pressing that term. I want to see how much Sub-Saharan African blood that you have, for Sub-Saharan African DNA. You're a 30% Sub-Saharan African. That is to separate North Africa from Sub-Saharan Africa, which is bogus because we're talking about the same people, same continent, for thousands of years, and you can't just separate them because of colonization. So when you go into North Africa and you get into Morocco, you go to Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, North Kemet, North Egypt, you see a lot of mixed people. And Morocco especially, you see a lot of people with white colored skin. And what they don't realize, what a lot of people don't realize, is their ancestors were Romans invaders that basically came in after the Berbers, basically, or the Muslims, or the Moors. We're going to get into a brief little second. Came in and conquered. Had the land taken from them, I should say. But this is what this thing is about, and they basically want to take the North to try to make a claim for Kemet, which is basically what it's all about. To try to make the claim that, somehow Europeans had Kemet before Africans. They had already put out information saying that, Egyptologists for decades, for years now, had it wrong about the DNA of the mummies. They're trying to separate the ancient Egyptians from the rest of Africa. They're trying to separate, the Moroccans, the people from Algeria, Libya, what have you, from the rest of Africa, because the North is basically the territory that they colonized and have taken over when you pay attention. So now for decades, a lot of people have been waking up. A lot of people have been understanding that history is not what we thought it was, that we have been lied to about history. A lot of black people have been coming into the knowledge and understanding of their true history. And we understand about Kemet. We understand about Egypt and the ancient Egyptians and the dynasties being ruled by African kings. Now, again, there has been a claim to ancient Kemet, and for some reason we keep getting in this debate about the ancient Egyptians. Were they black, were they white, or what have you? A lot of people want to say it doesn't matter, but it matters to African people because we have seen so many of our accomplishments hidden and taken away by Europeans and covered up because they don't want the world to know the accomplishments and the knowledge that we had long before European domination and rule throughout Europe. So what I talked about in the Moors DVD was about how things was before the control of the European powers, and how Africans was in power throughout Europe, Rome as well. And so many different civilizations had already been built long before European domination. Again, I talked about this in a video on the hidden accomplishments of African people, about how we was kings and how we have kingdoms and castles already, built long before European domination. And these castles still stand today. In ruins, most of them are, but the proof is there that you have a line that we have below that line, African rulership throughout Africa, throughout Europe. And it's sketchy. They have been able to cover up a lot, but most of the stuff, the real damning information is still there. You can't just get rid of an entire castle that was well built. So the castle's still there. A lot of the history is still there. The people understand what took place during that time, and basically what took place was the colonization of a lot of these countries, and how the royal families was basically enslaved and had their money and wealth stripped, and that's basically what took place. So what Kemet, we have been seeing a lot of movies come out, and how they're basically really trying to steal ancient Egypt from African people. Now, let's not make a mistake. The Ptolemies did rule in Kemet, but they were conquerors, of course. They conquered their way onto the throne. The Ptolemaic era was ruled by Europeans, but we understand this, and that's separated from the rest of the dynasties that we know was ruled by African people. And when I take this trip to Kemet at the end of the month, I will basically prove my point and show you that, because it's been a while since I've been there, but you just can't cover it up. And I'm going to point it out specifically and show people what they're trying to do, and how we could just kill all that noise 100% and show that ancient Kemet was ruled by African people. Because one, if you go there and ask the Arabs themselves, they will tell you that they are colonizers. They are basically conquerors who conquered that land. So we can already go back in history and find out when the Arabs took Kemet from the Romans. That is documented. We already know that. So we know before that time it was ruled by Rome, it was ruled by the Greeks, and before that by the ancient Egyptians. Period, point blank. So we're not talking about all this time European rulership. So to say that Kemet belonged to Europeans is to say that the Europeans was fighting against themselves, during all this time through history, and we know that's not true. So because of the movies, because of the cover-up, because of the lack of people really having the power, the ability to speak to the African Americans and the Black community, to educate them on what Kemet really is and what it really was. And because of this, you have a lot of people growing up with this misconception that ancient Egypt was ruled by Arabs or ruled by Europeans. I know when I was growing up, I just thought it was ruled by Arab people. I never fathomed that Black people, African people, actually ruled in Egypt, even though Egypt is in Africa. And that's how well they've been able to basically block us out of history. And it wasn't until I actually went there that I seen, what was going on. So you have a lot of people who actually believe, Northern Africa basically belonged to Europeans, that the Moors were Arabs or the Moors were Caucasian people, believe it or not. Yeah, a lot of people believe that. And you have a lot of people in Morocco and Algeria who basically was born in these countries and know they have family there for hundreds of years, don't realize how far back colonization goes, to where before you had the conquest of Europeans, that it was actually land belonging to Africans, of course, since we were on the planet first, and since we were, of course, in Africa first. So a lot of people have this ideology, they have this misconception that Northern Africa belongs to them. So I want to read something from a Moroccan who actually believes this. Now, this is from a discussion on the Moors being black or not. It says, "God, what's wrong with you African Americans? You are so dumb. Or is it just inferiority complex? I'm a Moroccan and I know my history. Moors were Caucasoid Mediterranean beavers. No blacks ever existed in North Africa prior to slave trade. And what's all with the fake 18th century portraits and pictures of slave descendants, you people make me sick. Are you a North African? No, I am. Did you live in North Africa? No, I did. Did you ever visit a real museum in North Africa? No, I did. Did you study North African ancient history in North African University? No, I did. I'm the original, you're the fake, so stop stealing our history, sick people. Then I could read about 20 or 30 more comments like that from different people throughout the world who have this understanding that Africa is not Africa. That, somehow before black people got to Africa, it was ruled by white people. And that's because of the cloak, the web of lies that have been, thrown over a lot of people's face. Basically instilling this belief that the European powers have always ruled. Now, again, there's a huge misconception about the Moors that we basically straightened out in the DVD. But you have a lot of people who think that the Moors were Muslims. And you got to understand that the Moors existed long before Islam. So when you go back and research the history on the Moors and who they were, and understand that, you basically have different Moors. And Moors is just not one set group of people. It's basically what the Europeans, what the Greeks, and what the Romans basically called learned Africans. They were called Moors. And, I basically straightened this out in the DVD. You can understand what this stuff is really about. But, what people believe in, countries like Morocco, Algeria, if you go look at the people today, you'll see white skin. Some of them almost look white. You can tell it's a mix of people there. And a lot of them are ignorant of their history, like this guy who I just read from. Now, one, you have to understand that the northern part of Morocco, stretching over to the northern part of Algeria, was called Mauritania. Now, Mauritania, the natives there were called the Morai by the Greeks and the Romans. Now, Morai means dark skin. It comes from Moris, which the Romans called them, which also means dark skin. This is supposedly where the word Moors derived from. So, one, you have too much terminology sounding like Moors. You have Moras, Morai, so many M words, Maurice, so many words that begin with M that sound like Moor a little bit, that hints to Moor a little bit, that means black or brunette or having something to do with darkness. So you have to understand that, the Moors were black people, period, point blank. There's no way around it. And they existed long before the Islam, before the Arabs, started their conquest. Now, the reason why they want to associate them with Islam is to set a faulty timeline to where they want to say that the Moors began, which the Moors began before that. And they can do that. They're trying to do that because they want to steal, again, northern Africa. Now, if you take away the Moors, you separate them from the Arabs. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, there were Moors with the Arabs. There were Moors that are Muslim. If you look at the Moors to this day, they are Muslim. They practice they understand the inner understanding of Islam. Let me put it that way. And the thing is, the Moors, along with the Arabs, or Muslims, whatever you want to say, they went on a tear. They went out conquering so much of Europe and North Africa for the Romans. And when you go to 711 AD, when the Moors go into Spain and basically take Spain from Africans, believe it or not, they built so many beautiful things. They built so many things. And if you separate Africans, black people, from the Arabs, you would have to admit, the Europeans would have to admit, that African people had the knowledge of building long before Europeans, and they built so many beautiful castles and so many beautiful things throughout not just Europe but Africa as well.